Hey everyone, Razzbowski here, and welcome back to the Five Nights at Freddy's novel, The Silver Eyes. Maybe the cameras are just in the main room, Carlton said. Nope, Jessica said. There are cameras everywhere out there. So, Carlton said. So, there's got to be another control room, Jessica said triumphantly. Maybe down the hall by the other stage. Charlie went back out to the main room again. She was feeling restless, less excited by the discoveries than the others, though she was not sure why. She watched the stage. Carlton was still playing with the buttons, Bonnie and Chica jerking in small, disjointed motions as Freddy Fazbear remained motionless. His eyes half closed and his mouth slack, slightly open. Hey, Lamar said suddenly. Marla, the music, I hear it now. Everyone was silent again. Then Marla shook her head. Creepy, she said, more excited this time, and rubbing her hands together as though they were sharing campfire stories. Lamar looked thoughtfully at Freddy. Let's go find the other control room, Jessica said, emerging with a determined look on her face. Okay, Marla jumped from the stage to join them, and they started scanning the rest of the stage, looking for a second door. I'm staying in here, Jason called from the first room. This is cool! Chica swiveled back and forth rapidly on the stage as he pushed her button repeatedly. Lamar went to join Jason. Okay, my turn, he said, leaning in the door. He went in, not waiting for Jason's response. Charlie stayed where she was, still staring at Freddy, frozen in the middle of his act. John came up next to her and she felt a flash of irritation. She did not want to be cajoled into joining in the search. He stood there for a moment, looking at Freddy, then leaned in close and whispered, I'm counting to 100. You better hide. Surprised out of her thoughts, she looked at him for a moment, her irritation broken. He winked at her, then covered his eyes. It was absurd. It was childish, and in that moment it was the only thing she wanted to do. Slightly giddy, Charlie took off, looking for a place to hide. Jason pushed a series of buttons again, with increasing frustration. I'm bored now, he announced. How can you be bored? Lamar said, wide-eyed. They aren't working anymore. Jason continued to push buttons, no longer watching the monitors. Lamar studied the monitor. Buddy's head was up and turned to the side, his eyes appearing to watch the camera. Well, go find your sister then, he told Jason. I don't need her permission to be bored. Impatiently, Jason climbed up and out of the control room. Everyone is so sensitive, Lamar muttered, suddenly realizing he was alone in the control room. He climbed out, but Jason was already gone. Jessica was leading the exploration party, heading towards the little stage that they had discovered the night before. Marla looked back and saw Jason skipping to catch up just before they disappeared into the long hall. Hey, be careful! She called over her shoulder as Jason branched off into his own direction. Lamar caught up to the group and followed them on their way into the hall. The main dining room was empty now, though Jason could hear Charlie and John's playful shouts echoing from the party rooms that extended off the main building. Left alone, Jason headed straight for the arcade. It was more dimly lit than the rest of the place, and without power in the arcade machines appeared to be towering black monoliths in a forgotten graveyard. The air was stale and thin. Jason went to the nearest console and pressed a few buttons. Some stuck with age, but nothing happened. Plug it in, duh! He ducked beneath the games to check, but even though the mounds of wires seemed impossibly tangled, it looked like they were plugged in. Maybe there's a switch for the whole room. He started checking the walls. There was no obvious switch, but as Jason scanned the walls, he became distracted by the children's drawings taped in clusters across the walls. Jason was too young to have any memories of his own from being at Freddy's. Even Hurricane itself was no more than a hazy set of impressions. But something about the pictures brought up a sense of nostalgia. They were all the same, really. The kind of drawings he and every other kid had done. Figures with circles for bodies and sticks for arms in a multitude of colours. Only a few details showed which figures were the animals. Chica with her beak, Bonnie with his ears. It seemed like there had been a bit more attention paid to the drawings of Freddy Fazbear. They were a little better. The children had been a little bit more careful to make those details right. Jason found himself looking at one drawing in particular. It was the same as the others, maybe a little better. Bonnie the bunny hugging a child. There was no name at the bottom. Jason took the picture off the wall, uncertain why this one in particular had interested him so much. John burst his head into the room with a wide grin and deep breath, but then seeing that it was only Jason inside, he quickly returned to a stoic demeanour. What's up? He nodded his head, playing it cool, then casually stepped away before silently returning to a sprint. Playing hide-and-seek like babies, Jason thought. I hope I never fall in love. He looked back down at the drawing and squinted as though not seeing it correctly. The child was now facing away from Bonnie. Jason stared at it for a long moment. Wasn't he hugging Bonnie? He looked out at the main room, but Marla was out of sight, looking for the control room. Jason folded the drawing quickly and put it in his pocket. It was suddenly apparent how quiet the place had become. Jason stepped out timidly and peeked into the dining room. Guys, he whispered, looking back once. Then he ventured out to find the group. Jessica, Lamar, Carlton and Marla were still creeping slowly through the other half of the building. The spotlights from the dining room didn't reach this far, only assenting edges and corners or specks of glitter. Jessica scanned the wall with her flashlight, looking for breaks in the plaster and motioned to Marla to do the same. We have to check for the hidden door, she said. The last one wasn't really hidden, Carlton pointed out. Yeah, Jessica conceded, but she kept the light on the wall, clearly not ready to give up the hunt. They passed 2 bathrooms they did not notice the night before. Do you think the plumbing still works? Carlton said. I really need to pee. What are you, 5 years old? I don't want to hear that. Jessica rolled her eyes and walked faster. When they got to the room with the little stage, everyone stopped. Marla and Lamar went closer to the stage, drawing together slightly, as if unaware they were doing it. Even though Carlton and Jessica had been there the night before, it was as though they were seeing it anew through Marla and Lamar's eyes. They had still not seen what was behind the curtain, Carlton suddenly realized. I remember these posters, Lamar said. I remember this too, Marla said, pointing to the sign that read, Out of Order, strung across the stage. My whole life I felt uneasy when I've seen that phrase, even though it's just at a vending machine, she laughed insincerely. I know what you mean, Lamar said softly. But before he could go on, Carlton interrupted. Found it! Maybe, Jessica amended. There was a door close set in the wall like the one below the stage, not quite hidden, but not meant to be noticed. It was painted black like the walls of the room. Jessica turned the knob and pulled it, but it was stuck tight. Locked? Lamar said. I don't think so. Let me try, Marla said. She grabbed the knob and yanked, and it came open, sending her stumbling back. Impressive, Lamar said. Yeah, well, taking care of Jason makes me tough, Marla grinned, as she knelt down to squeeze through the small door. It was almost the same as the first room, a set of 8 TV screens and a large panel of unmarked black buttons. Carlton fumbled to find the master switch, reaching his hand into the dark corner. Then, with a click, the power came on, and a soft buzzing sound filled the room. Rich, bizarre reds and blues began streaming in under the door from the stage lights outside. Jessica and Carlton began switching the televisions on. They fiddled with the knobs until they were showing pictures, though most were very dark. From here, they could see a long shot of the main stage, just as in the other room, but the rest of the cameras were showing other places and angles. While the first control room had only had shots of the main dining room, here they could see into other areas of the restaurant, the private party rooms, which were set up with glittery decorations for events that would never happen, hallways, an office, and even what looked like a storage closet. The room behind them was visible as well. The camera trained on the Out of Order sign, now lit with otherworldly shades and the curtain behind it. On one screen they could see Jason ducking back into the arcade. Maybe I should go get him, Marla said, but no one responded. Carlton started pressing buttons. The spotlights appeared and vanished on the stage in the main dining room as he did, illuminating first one animal and then the other, lighting up empty spaces where someone might have stood. He flipped a switch and it seemed for a moment that nothing had happened. Then Lamar started laughing, pointing at one of the screens. The pizza decorations lining the walls were spinning wildly as though they might leap off and start rolling away. I forgot they used to do that, Lamar said as Carlton brought them slowly to a halt. There was a large black dial to one side of the buttons and Carlton spun it, but it seemed to do nothing. Let me try, Lamar said. He elbowed Carlton in the side and pressed another button. There was a high-pitched whine. They all jumped, and it quickly faded down to a static hum. Lamar pressed it again, and the sound was gone. I guess we know what turns the speakers on, Carlton said. I bet we could figure out how to play music, Jessica said. She reached forward and pushed something else, and the stage lights popped up while the main lights dimmed. The figures on the main stage suddenly stood out a little, commanding attention. She pushed it again, the lights faded back to normal. I love that, Carlton said. What? Stage lights, he said. One switch and it's like a whole nother world up there. Another button flickered the stage lights on and off in the room behind them, while another started and stopped the merry-go-round, its tinkling music grinding too slowly, as if the ride itself were trying to remember how the song went. They managed to get the speakers on again without feedback whine, but there was still only static. "I have an idea," Jessica said, and pushed to the front of the group. She switched on the static again and started turning the knobs back and forth. The hum grew lower in pitch and then higher, responding to her adjustments. "Progress," Carlton said. "It's still just static," Marla said, unimpressed. Jessica turned it lower again, then snatched her hand from the dial like she had just been bitten and punched the button, shutting the speakers off. "What?" Marla said. Jessica remained motionless, her hand still suspended in the air. "What happened? Did it shock you?" Carlton said. "It sounded like a voice," Jessica said. "What did it say?" Marla said, apparently interested again. I don't know. Let me try again." She turned the speaker on again, calling forth the static and lowering the hum as they all listened intent on the sound. As it sank to a lower register, just below the range of a human voice, they all heard it. Grinding and broken words, almost too slow and distorted to be considered speech. They looked at each other. "What on earth?" Marla said. "No, it's just random static," Lamar said. He reached for the controls and dialed the pitch back up slowly. For another fleeting moment, there was a purposeful sound. "That sounded like singing," Carlton said. "No," Lamar said, but sounding more unsure this time. "Do it again," Marla said. Lamar did, but this time the static was empty. "Is that Charlie?" Marla suddenly became focused on a blurry figure moving down the dark hallway towards them, sliding along the wall as if, though, to remain unnoticed. Charlie was hurrying, almost skipping, trying to find another place to hide. She glanced behind her, vaguely suspecting that John might be cheating. She moved through the darkness and towards the colourful glow of the small stage curtain, which was throwing eerie reds and blues onto the tables and party hats. Going down this passage had always felt like a long and perilous journey, one not to be made alone. She kept her gaze fixed behind her, letting the wall beside her guide her step. She knew John was close, probably creeping up on her in the dark. Suddenly, she backed into something, stopping short. She had been moving faster than she thought, or more likely the hall was not as long as she remembered. She saw a shadow at the end of the hall. If he turns his head, he would see her. Without thinking, Charlie climbed up onto the platform that she had bumped into and ducked behind the curtain, tucking herself between the wall and the large, bulky prop, trying not to breathe. "Charlie," he called, still far away. "Charlie!" Charlie felt her heartbeat quicken. There had always been boys she liked now and then, but this was something different. She wanted him to find her, but not quite yet. As she waited, her eyes adjusted to the darkness, and she was able to make out the shape of the curtain and the edge of the stage. She looked up at the object in front of her. No. Her body shuddered and froze. It was standing over her. It was the thing from her father's workshop, the misshapen thing that hung in the corner, shaken by random convulsions, and its eyes burned silver. Does it hurt? No, it was still, and the eyes were blank and dull. It was staring straight ahead, insensate, and its arm with its hook hung uselessly at its side. She recognized his eyes, but he was somehow worse now, encased in hollow body parts and matted with red fur, with the stench of oil and glue. He had a name now. They call him Foxy, but she knew better. Charlie shrank away, pressing against the wall. Her heart was racing, and her breath was shallow, too fast. Her arm had been touching its leg, and now she felt a sudden itchiness from it, as though she had been contaminated. She wiped her hand violently against her shirt as she began to panic. Run! She sprang away from it, pushing off the wall to get away, to move before it saw her, but the edge of the stage caught her foot. She stumbled forwards, momentarily becoming entangled in the curtain. She struggled to get free when suddenly the thing's arm jerked up, and the hook slashed at her arm. She ducked away too late, and it cut her, the pain shocking, like